All right, welcome back, everyone. My name is Dustin, and this is just a quick video to go over some necessary changes that I had to make in the editor. I was working on how I want to set up the editor user state, and I found that the way that we're saving and loading the projects was not really optimal. So I was using the SaveProject struct. So let's take a look at that. That has actually been removed now. So here I was using the SaveProject struct, right? What we did is we just held on to the necessary paths as strings, and that has been changed now to use the ProjectInfo class. Let's take a look at that right now. As you can see, there's lots of changes that I have made to reflect this and some other necessary changes to make the code a lot cleaner. So let's go and check that out now. So I started with an enum of specific project folders. We were already creating these folders when we created the project. However, we did not have a good way to look them up. Say we wanted the content folder here, right? And we wanted to get that content folder. We would have to format a string with path separators and the project path whenever we wanted to use that. It wasn't very optimal. So now we have an unordered map of folder types here, so project folder types, to file system paths. The good thing about the file system path is it will automatically pick the correct separator for us. I don't have to constantly use the path separator. When we create these paths should always be the same, but they must be relative paths based on where the project is actually located, okay? Because we can move the project anywhere, like the actual game project, not the editor, not the executable, but wherever we have the projects saved on our system. So it needs to be a relative path that we create at the start. So we scroll down here, you can see we have a bunch of stuff in this class that's going to make things a lot nicer for us. And we have this map of paths, and this is just a map of file system paths to the project folder type. And if we go up here, I have a try get folder path. And this just returns an optional path because you may not have had it set up yet. So it checks to see if it has the path. If it has the path, it will return that path. Otherwise, it returns a null op. And we can use that in other places to verify that it's been set up correctly. So let's actually quickly go to the project loader where a lot of this is done. So if we go here, right up here at the top, as you can see here, we have all the necessary content folders that we had previously. We had our scripts, our assets, sound effects, music, all these things that we already had. But now we also have the big folders here. So soon we're going to be having an editor state, and that's the reason why I wanted to do this refactoring. It really needed to happen. Soon we're going to have an editor state and the editor config files that will go into there. So the editor state will keep track of what editor settings that you are using for this particular project. So it'll keep track of the displays that are open, the display sizes, the display positions, any flags that are in the editor or editor related, such as grid snap, show collisions, etc. Those will all be saved based on the last user. So whoever was using it last, so when you open up the project, it'll still be the same. You don't have to reset them again. I would also like to be able to import and export editor configurations so you don't have to set it up for each project. You can just import it into your new project and load the desired configuration. So that's on the way as well. And currently, we don't have the ability to change what windows or displays we want to show. We just show them all. So if we run this real fast, I'll show you what I mean. But we have our project, and I've been working on this little template top-down project for everybody. And we just load this up right here. This is going to be the project settings. I'll show you guys that shortly. But yeah, all our displays are just automatically shown no matter what. And we're going to have this displays tab. It's already there, but we're not doing anything with it yet. Right now, it's basically just for show. But this is going to help us control what windows we show, and some will be default, like they'll always be shown no matter what you do. But eventually, we'll have all that working. And as you see, I removed the project settings. There is no more project settings up here because we are going to make the project settings display, or I already made it, but it's going to be extendable. Okay, and we'll go over that shortly. Okay, so if we scroll down here when we're creating a new project, you can see here when we're creating the game file path, this is the path that is the .s2d project file where that is located. And we're just adding the Scion2d folder onto it, right? Or adding it to the path. This works here and is fine. However, I had this style everywhere and it can get pretty ugly. So for every path, I did this basically the same thing where I would just take the project path and I would start adding everything onto it that I want. And that can get pretty ugly. But once we have this path, the game path or the actual project path, we can create all the other paths that we need using the map created above. And we can also add them to our project info map so we can access them with an easy lookup. So we do that right here. As you can see, so we have our map dirs that we created above. These are all the default directories that every project will have. And this is when we're creating, if you see, we're creating a new project here. So it's going to take each folder type And it's going to take the game file path, concatenate the subdir onto it that we need, and then create the directory. Okay. And then once it creates that directory, it's going to add it into our folder paths. This will allow us to do easy lookups for that particular path and this project. Okay. And we're going to be setting the project name and the project path. All that stuff gets set here now in the project info instead of the save project struct, because that has been removed. And also, when we load the project, we want to do the same thing. Let's go down here. So we're loading the project. It's parsing the JSON project file. And down here, so it sets the project name. That's fine. And as you notice, this is the project info now. And we set the project path. That's fine. And right here, once we have the project path, we actually want to start creating our subdirs again. We're loading the project and it needs to actually make these folders. It's not making the files, but it needs to make them in our project so we can access them throughout the project. So we're making the paths, we're creating these paths and adding them into that map that I showed you earlier. But they must exist. So if you see here, I put a check here that the path must exist before we even try to load it, or it gives us a fail with a nice error. Okay. And right here, it says add folder to path. That's exactly what we need. And right here is an example of using it. So we have an optional script path. Right here, you can see it's an SCD optional. And we're trying to get the folder path. And all we have to do now is send this in like this. And that's much cleaner. So this will do all the work behind the scenes for us. And we've already set up the paths. And then we can just use it like a regular file system path. And then all you have to do, it's much easier to concatenate paths to whatever you want them to be. It's easier to find if it exists because you're passing in a path. Very easy. And here's another one with the game config. That's where we're going to put the script list. The script list is also not considered a regular script. It is considered a game configuration script. It's not, you'll never actually use that script in the game. It is just used to help us load other scripts. So it's no longer going to be in our scripts folder. I moved it out of there and put it into the game config folder. And if we go back up to the top quickly, the game config folder is right here. So it's a config folder that's outside of the content, and then it's in the game. And our editor configuration files will be in the editor config, and then we'll be able to grab them. And we'll scroll back down to the loading right here. And there's another thing I added that's really cool. Scroll down, scroll down, scroll down. So we're setting our right here is the file icon. So previously we had the icon, the idea of the icon. We created the icon replacer, but we also wanted to create the icon for packaging, when we package the game, what we're going to change the executable to. So what I did here was I created this member of the file icon. And this is one of the, it's part of the project info. And what it does is it checks to see if the file icon exists, and then it sets the file icon path. Now this one doesn't just set the file icon path. Let's go into that. So what it does is we also have an icon texture that has to do with the project settings. The reason why I wanted to do this was because it will now be set in the project settings display. We'll also want to display the actual icon. So what I did was I created a new texture loader, create for the icon. So we added a new texture type here. We can now load icons in, but this will be part of the project info. So I can actually display the icon for the user. And I'll show you how we do that shortly. So for loading that texture, I had to add another texture type. As you can see, the texture type icon. And we also had to add some new functionality to the texture loader to handle this. So let's actually go to that texture loader. Here, we go to texture loader, and we go to the bottom. So I had to add the load icon texture because it is a separate way that this needs to be loaded. And we also have to check to see if it's a PNG. The reason why, because an ICO file can have an embedded PNG, but it can also have a bitmap. We're only going to support 32-bit bitmaps because that will be our RGBA, and that will allow us to have the alpha channel. But there are 24 or less bit but we're not going to support that. You can always just open up that file in GIMP and then export it as a different format, and that will help. And GIMP is free. So if we take a look at this loading of the icon, so this is done a little bit differently, right? Well, it's not entirely. So I created another icon info here. So the dir that we created before for the icon replacer, that was Windows specific, I actually ended up creating a new file up here, the icon info, that allows us to do something similar. So it's doing the same thing. And then I need to check to see if it's a PNG. If it's a PNG, we just use soil from memory and take the image data. If not, we have to do the bitmap info header stuff here. All of this stuff, but we're checking the bit counts and all of that. The bitmap will be BGRA. It needs to be flipped and converted to RGBA to work with our OpenGL textures, okay? And for the isPNG, it's just checking to see if the PNG signature is the first part of the data. That's the goal there. Awesome. So there's lots of changes to accommodate the removal of the save project. So let's go back here. So as you see here, there's lots of changes here. So I added the new project settings display stuff. The package display had to be changed, as you can see here. This is what I meant by the path. So see, we had the save project, and we are trying to create this scriptless path. And it would do all this adding with the FMT format. That was fine. It did the job, except now we don't have to do that. Now it's just an optional path right here. Just get scriptless path. Send that path, and that is created right away. First, load the project because it should be in the config folder rather than being part of the scripts. Okay. And in the menu display here, I removed some things. We no longer want to have the right here, anything that was saved project had to be changed to do the project info. Anywhere in the game that was using that has, in the editor that's been using that has been changed. Down here, as you can see, we had the project settings. Well, that doesn't work. The project settings, there's going to be a lot more to them that would just fit nicely in a tab here or a menu tab. So I removed this completely. Anything that's project settings related was completely removed down here. And so, yeah, we still have these settings. That was all cleaned up. But these settings, so we have our settings here as well for physics and all this stuff. That has all been removed because that now goes in the project settings display that we created, the project settings display. Because having it in a tab, it gets kind of ugly there. Much easier and cleaner to just add it to the project settings display. There's also a lot of cleanup that I did as well. For instance, there's a lot of places where we're using the const expr char or const expr char pointer. Where's a good place for that? Right here in the editor utilities. As you can see here, we use the const expr const char pointer for the drop texture source, all these sources, and that worked fine. However, I changed those to use string views because a string view allows us to get the size and do comparisons much easier than a direct const char. Okay, that has been adjusted. And I started to also add some more helper utilities. As you see here, we have the is reserved path or file and the is default project path or file. The one check is to check to see if a specified path is a reserved path because we don't want the user to be able to save projects or save anything in a reserved system path. We want to block that out. If they want to do it on their own system, that's fine, but we don't want the editor to be able to do that. And it's the same with the is default project path or file. I don't want the user to be able to delete any of the default project folders or files or rename them from the editor. Okay. Now, they can still delete them from their folder explorer if they want. However, we want to prevent this from accidentally happening from our program. Okay. And like I said before, the script list that was generated now been moved. It's no longer in the scripts folder. That has been moved to the game config file or config folder. And I'll show you that in a minute. And yeah, there's lots of stuff here. So I added another input text read only little helper function. And all this does is gray out the text for us right here. Yeah, so it's basically just graying out the text. So it's a read only text. Okay. And there's lots of other stuff, lots of places, like as you can see that it's been changes. The script compiler right here is now a string view. And we have the project loader. Like if we look at the project loader, let's actually just go right to the file itself and go to project loader. As you can see, everything had to be changed. All these changes in the side here, that all had to be changed to accommodate the new project info. And if we go over here, control here, we create the scriptless file now in the project loader. It's created right here upon new project creation. Right away, so we always have it. And then we change this instead of the taking in a save project, we take in the project info. Okay. And what are some other nice changes? Yeah, so we added the project info, lots of good stuff there. The asset display right here. This had to be adjusted and cleaned up a lot. I adjusted this here because that was an issue. So say you had a prefab that didn't have a texture, well, it would crash the editor because it would be looking for a texture. The issue was it would be breaking out early and then wouldn't pop the IMGUI ID that we added. So we pushed an ID, but we weren't popping it. So this had to be adjusted to accommodate that. Now it only happened in debug. A lot of the stuff I do is in debug as I want to make sure things are working correctly. Okay. Then we have our scripting system. This had to be adjusted because we no longer use the save project, and we did this recently. So now we need to get the optional script path from the project info, and this should already be set. It's set automatically when we load the project. or create a project instead of a lot of this extra stuff. Now, much cleaner, and we do it like this. And then in the scene, same idea. If you look here, right in our scene, we're doing all this extra stuff will give us the scenes folder. Now we can just get the scenes path directly. It's much easier, much cleaner, and we just set everything in a much cleaner way than before. Now, the easiest thing, like I'm going to be committing this today, so make sure you check it out and check out all the changes to make sure that it works for you. Now, if you're already creating projects with the editor and you don't want to ruin those projects, you're going to have to make some changes before you load them. Okay, so let's actually run a project and I can kind of go through it. Go back here and we'll just run it. So we will open up a project here and we have our top down template. So let's open this up, load project. And as you can see, we still have our everything that's working and we have our script list and it's our characters and utilities. So if I go in here and I have my template project info here, this new project info folder, if we go in here and check out this folder here, and then we have our content. We no longer in our scripts have the script list. That has been moved. So if you have an old project that you want to use, you have to create these new folders. You need to create the config folder here, and then the editor and game folders. You need to create these, and then inside here, that's where you put your script list. That'll be in there because that's where it's looking for it now. Okay, for it in that folder. And just like before, we have our crash logs and content, assets, all that stuff there is still there. Okay. Let's go back into our content and see if our reserved works the way that it expects. So if we go to content folder and I go to scripts and we have our scripts, I can delete any of these folders, but I shouldn't be able to delete my scripts. So if I go here and go delete, it shouldn't work. And it says it cannot be undone. Try to delete. See how it didn't delete, and we should have a log down here. Right here it says failed to delete, blah, 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 blah. Scripts, the content display, and then it should tell you why. Right here it says this is a reserved default project folder or file. You shouldn't be allowed to delete it. We clear that, and let's actually go back to our content and try to delete the main.lua. Try to delete that. Shouldn't delete it. But if it does, it does. Cool. So it didn't delete it. Let's go back and check, right? Because this is a reserved file, right? You shouldn't be able to delete that file. It's necessary. Now, you can still delete it outside of the editor. That's fine. Like it's not fine, but we can't control what people do outside of the editor. But you can create your program to prevent people from doing things like that in your program. Okay. And we have the package game here. If you notice, I've changed a few things. You no longer have the icon, and this is now read only because this is going to be controlled in the project settings. And right now, I have the project settings right here, and it's just a floater right now because it's still in testing. And then you have your projects. You're gonna have general, physics, graphics. Right now, graphics I only have window width and window height, and that's for the package display. Right. So you're going to have your packaged window when you actually create the game, and this is what's going to control that. There's going to be some other stuff in here as well, and that's on the way. Then we have physics, and we're going to have our collision categories. And this is, again, a lot of this is just temporary. I'm going to make it a lot nicer shortly. We can actually just yes, no, let's leave this open here. And we're going to be able to change these things. And you're going to be able to add some in. These are default ones that you have. And I'm going to create categories that will have all these filters set already. And then you can just give your game object that particular filter. Kind of like how Unreal has like destructions or other collisions, like actor collision or whatever. We're going to do the same thing. So say we have a player collision category. It will have all the other masks set automatically so it can collide with an enemy, items, walls, ground. It'll just automatically make that for us. And you're also going to have the ability to add in new named filter categories from the project setting. And if we go to general, then we have art. And this is where it's read from. We also added the copyright notice. Now, this I haven't got this actually working yet. But every time you make a new script from the editor, it's going to add this copyright notice to the top of that script. Then you can have a little description, and then we can create an icon. Okay. Icon is expecting it to be in the content path or accessible by the content path, right? So you don't want to have anything outside of the project because project should be self-contained. Shouldn't be looking in other folders, other directories to find things, right? So right here, this is read only. So if I change this, this is where the name is changed. Change the name in your project settings, and that's where it is. And same with these. A lot of this stuff is going to change, and we're going to get into that. This is going to be like the startup option, so you can choose what scene that you want to package the game with. Okay, and then we'll have our destination and package assets. So, and that's about it. Lots of good changes coming our way. In the next video, we're actually going to create the adding and loading music and sound effects from memory, because we're going to need to be able to do that when we package games, because we won't be actually packaging MP3, WAV, or other files. We'll be packaging the data, and we'll need to load that data. Okay, that's it. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And if you have any issues or any problems, please let me know. We also have the Discord. You can check that out as well, because there could be questions. It's much easier to answer questions on the Discord than it is to answer them in comments. Comments are highly appreciated, so make sure you do those as well. Subscribe and like, and that's it for this video. All right, take it easy.